that energy on the back roads. This time of year, it's different somehow. Something about a fall night. Feels like it's waiting for something to arrive. Maybe it's just me. Baby ticks beside me as the engine cools. That metal settling sound she makes after a long drive. Air smells of wet leaves and maybe rust. Like autumn trying to hold on just a little longer. The locals still talk about him. Some in more hushed tones, and only after they look over their shoulder. The phantom that once terrorized this very countryside, now stuck in the tread of my boots. Reports of bodiless footsteps giving chase from behind, growing closer, witnesses turn, eyes wide, but nothing's there. Still, they run. Some even report a breath on the back of their neck from nothing. Reports stretched across 2 counties, stitched together by folklore. Most of the modern residents I've spoken with over the years say it's nothing. Funny thing about nothing, it still somehow leaves tracks. 150 years or so of them. People refuse to walk alone in the dark. Some see unexplained lights in the woods, church bells ring on their own. Even residents shooting at ghosts they swear were there when they pulled the trigger. I've seen the purported door, decades old at least, and the claimed bullet hole. Pulling my eyes from the wooded valleys before me, no phantom lights, but the water tower looms over the sleepy Midwestern town, standing guard on the horizon, or maybe it's a warning sign. I've been around long enough to see it painted white twice. They keep putting that black silhouette of the phantom back. It's as large as the town's letters for all to read. You can almost feel those eyes staring back from up there. And the darkening sky behind looks like it wants to rain. Mist in the crisp autumn wind swirls before me. Easy to see shapes if you're looking for them. Harder to unsee once you have. A handful of hours drive from here, there's another stop I can never quite skip. A vampire case. An old one. Buried in the archives and dug up every few decades by someone like me. Night drops quick in the valleys. Baby's headlights now stretch thin across the gravel. Pavement of the old back roads just visible in the distance. Right at the edge of where night takes back the dark. Soon the phantom will fade behind me, or maybe just fall in line somewhere out of sight. Not a modern sighting. No fresh blood or disturbed graveyard dirt. Just the quiet gravity of something that once felt too real to everyone involved. I still keep an eye on the newer cases when they cross my dash, just in case. Every time I'm in this corner of the map, I stop by. Nostalgia, I guess. After that, baby will take me another half day into a neighboring state. I'll be spending a few nights at the state's oldest hotel. One of those grand brick relics that unsettled people long before anyone ran wires through it. Where the hallways breathe just a little too long after you've stopped walking. Some nights, people swear to see shadows of people who aren't there. They even caught one in a picture. Maybe. After all, Halloween's only days away. It's maybe the 1 week the world gets honest about its shadows, and the closest it ever comes to running on the same frequency as me. Every mile feels like it's winding towards something waiting up ahead this time of year. Whatever it is, I'll be there if it decides to show itself. Always am. 1 mile at a time. 113,867 times, apparently. Only baby's keeping track. There's always someone out there standing in the dark, holding the line for the rest of us. Some nights, I think the universe expects it to be me. Tonight, I oblige. Somewhere out there, beyond the next turn, full tank of gas north, there's a cliff that waits its next witness too. Unquiet Realities, Episode 4, Unforeseen Variables. Dawn over Lake Pepin doesn't always come in clean. This morning, it drug itself across the water, slow, heavy, fighting the fog for every inch of light. By the time Keel and I stepped back onto the deck, the cliffs across the channel were just starting to show themselves. Made in rock, peering from behind the haze like a memory you're not sure you want back. 44 degrees, 36 minutes, 6.394 seconds north. 92 degrees, 17 minutes, 16.925 seconds west. The river was quiet in that way water gets when it's holding something close. No wind yet, just the slow grind of the houseboat shifting against its moorings and the faint hum beneath everything. Like the lake was still deciding what kind of day it wanted to be. Yeah, I was thinking for sure. Keel stood beside me on the upper deck. He had a can of soda in his hand. I had coffee, black, cooling faster than I liked in the morning air. The bluff above the water carries a legend, a woman's leap, a love, a betrayal, depending on who you ask. Every version, however, ends the same way. A body disappearing beneath, and a scream the Mississippi never quite forgot. Most versions of the story leave out the part that's hardest to sit with. She wasn't alone when she stepped toward the cliff. Early accounts describe a hunting party, her family among them, realizing too late what she meant to do. They ran, they shouted. Some say she began a kind of farewell chant, a last declaration meant for the living as much as the dead. And then she was gone. Seeing your bestowed fiancé stepping to a cliff's edge and then beyond, choosing the drop over everything else in that moment. Something frozen into the stone and sky from that day. The earliest written trace shows up in 1805 when Zebulon Pike heard the story from his Dakota guides. A dozen years later, another explorer gathered more of it from a man whose mother claimed she was witness to the leap. The legend moved the way old stories do, ridge to ridge, fire to fire, until even frontier families knew it. Laura Ingalls Wilder's father told a version in her early manuscript, a reminder that this cliff has been whispering the same grief into ears far more than 2 centuries. Some tragedies don't fade. They carve grooves in the world. Stone, air, water, theories abound, circling the thought that they can somehow hold the charge of a moment like that. Not just a tragic life ended at the bottom of the cliff, but too the emotions bursting into existence at the top, watching tragedy unfold. The energy, the something, getting imprinted like grooves on a record, holding the shape of a terribly sad song. And every so often, when conditions line up just right, maybe something in our reality acts like a needle on a record, and the past plays itself back. People call it a haunting. Could be. And maybe she has found peace. But perhaps the calm shattered by those left behind that fateful day. The memory just had too much weight for the cliff edge to manage quietly. And down here beneath the cliffs, the lake remembers too. Every story that falls from a height eventually enters the water. Some sink, some surface again, and some just keep flowing. Some people here say on certain nights when the fog rolls in from the channel and the wind hits just right, you can see her. A figure pacing the ridgeline, dress whipping in the gusts, eyes fixed on something none of us can see. Some say she's still searching. Some say she's still falling. Aren't we all? Not all roads lead out. Some, the darkest ones, lead in. Land, water, air, all seem to carry ghosts. The heaviest hauntings, I find, are held within. And it wasn't just the tragedy that traveled. Stories born on these bluffs have a way of drifting far beyond the river that made them. Long before Little House was a book, Laura Ingalls Wilder's father told a story he picked up in this same area, about a young Dakota boy who saved his people by riding a great creature across Lake Pepin. On paper, it reads like a hero tale. Some say it was a sturgeon, others aren't so sure. Lakes remember more than one kind of giant. On the water this morning, the fog hangs low, but Keel raises our spirits. You see, Keel and I take turns being the most world-worn, weary, or hell, just jaded. But on this case, he surprised me. Of all the cases we've done, he said, this is the one I'm actually most hopeful it delivers something. I had to look at him to see if he was joking. But he wasn't. Keel, the man who treats half the unexplained like the day job it is for him, and the other half like a bad habit, was actually hopeful. Earnestly hopeful. And that surprised me more than it should have. His walls were down, and something about that, his belief, his hunger for a real encounter, put a kind of charge in the morning air on a monster hunt. It's easier to stay jaded when your partner is too. Harder when he's standing there looking at the lake like it might finally give him something true. Keel shifts his weight to the left, arms uncrossing. He's getting restless. I know the signs. I catch his glance and nod knowingly up the river, the part we still had to chart. Now, I'm not saying we went all the way to the northernmost point of Lake Pepin, mostly because there may be specific laws about taking certain boats into restricted places. But there are so many laws, I can't be expected to remember them all. I finished the cold coffee and a quick swig. I fell into that place all my choices eventually go. Deep. Most things that land there burn a little. But before we shoved off again, I stepped towards the bow and let myself stand still. Really still. Probably the first time this expedition. One hand on the cold railing, damp with early dew. My eyes glazing over the forested shoreline. The fog moving past like it wasn't done telling its story. I took one breath. Deep, unhurried. The kind that sinks all the way into your ribs and lets you hear your own bones again. This is the world that made me, I said under my breath. Not for Keel, not for the lake. For me. The metal under my hand, the faint smell of river water carrying centuries of memory, all of it reminding me who I am when the noise falls away. Keel catches this, always does. Never says anything, doesn't have to. The way someone just gets it when they've seen you at your edges. And the day opened its jaws. The cliffs keeping their counsel above. Time to go to work. I moved fast down the dock, unmoored the bow line, shoved the boat with my boot, grabbed the stern line, let back a few feet over the water, throttle wide open before I hit the deck, Keel already at the helm. We were able to skirt the worst of the white wall of fog while taking aim at the next sighting location. We motored north, 22 miles of river and lake stretching ahead of us. No proper lake monster expedition skips a full survey. And by day's end, we'll have put 40 nautical miles from where we started. That's a lot of lake monster surveying. Along the way, we plan to drift at each documented sighting location, getting a feel for the water, the currents, the angles of light, the places where someone once stood and said, "I saw something." Watch the lake turn into a constellation of questions on the map. Some clusters made sense, some didn't. All of them felt like the kind of pattern that only makes sense in hindsight, if ever. Hours passed without us noticing. The fog burned off, the shoreline sharpened. The water stayed frustratingly ordinary. This is the part most people never see. The hours of slow work, drifting on the water, only after literal years of research conducted just to get us to this point. The sifting, the triangulating, the attempt, however futile, to impose order on the unknown. But mapping does something else too. It teaches you the personality of a place. And Lake Pepin, she had a personality. Wooded shoreline for miles. More wilderness than development. A quiet that didn't feel empty so much as observant. It reminded me sharply of the back roads Keel and I are always drawn to. Those forgotten stretches of land that seem to be waiting for something reckless enough to listen. And by midday, we charted nearly every documented sighting. The water was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that feels like it's saving its energy for something later. The houseboat drifted lightly as we climbed back up to the second-story observation deck. 2 chairs facing opposite directions, shoulder to shoulder, gave us a full 360-degree panoramic view of the lake. Cameras and binoculars, close enough to grab without thinking. We watched, we waited, and every ripple or shadow on the surface felt like a question the lake hadn't decided how to ask yet. That familiar charge, the kind of nervous anticipation you only get at the start of a hazard-laden adventure. Organized sports never stuck with me. I did climb mountains, however. Once, somewhere north of 14,000 feet, a whiteout blizzard stopped me just shy of Mount Rainier's summit. 2 climbers and a search and rescue ranger died on that mountain the week before I went up. Heavy, climbing up a glacier where a few days earlier people slid to their death. Not just a few terrifying seconds, mind you, but tumbling down a few thousand feet on sheer ice, giving everything you've got to stop yourself. Failure meant a few thousand-foot drop to their end. Could have just as easily been me. So, I still call my climb a success. Because sometimes, success is just survival. That same current was running under this day. Different mountain, same feeling. I had more gear to unpack and assemble. The waterproof metal detector I had been itching to use on the river bottom, and our underwater camera rig we wanted to use as often as possible. The air was already in the 60s, that too pleasant kind of morning that tries to convince you nothing bad can happen. Wake behind us, questions ahead. The river still has something to tell us. No proper lake monster expedition ever felt right to me without getting in the water at least once. From the river, it's impossible to miss the driftless region's pale cliff faces. I'm gonna rise up out of the trees, watching the lake like stone sentinels. It seemed only fair to step into Pepe's living room. The thing about Lake Pepin is, it's not dramatic from the surface. It just looks like a river that forgot to keep moving for a while. But the moment I hit the water and popped back up, I understood why people hinted at the depths here. The current took me faster than I liked. Even with fins, it was all I could do to kick my way back into the houseboat's vicinity. Keel stood at the rail with a musky rod, half serious about trying to get me with a lure if I drifted too far. You logged that, water speed, temperature, visibility, quietly wondering what it would mean if something large and heavy decided to move under those conditions. We had the lake mostly to ourselves. No tour boats, no fishing tournaments, no jet skis, just the occasional freight train groaning along the Wisconsin shore, snaking around the base of Maiden Rock while I floated, listening to my own breath and the creak of our boat. By the time the sun started nearing the tree line, we knew we had to find safe harbor before the river decided to teach us a lesson. Moon hits the water and everything gets honest, even the lies. That old black water keeps on rolling. We rented a slip at a marina for the night, out of the main channel traffic. Our vessel, as mighty and true as she was, rated for night navigation she wasn't. Same plan as before. Cameras armed, binoculars within reach, coffee and beer rotating in and out as needed. One more night on the water. One more chance for the river to show us something unscripted. I was hopeful for Keel's sake. Nervous what another letdown might do for him. The second story of the houseboat turned into a nocturnal observation deck. Binoculars, tripods, night vision, high-powered flashlights. The kind of gear spread that says we're serious, even with a beer in our hands and when nothing else wants to cooperate. We talked about exoplanets when the water was quiet. We told the UFO stories we told each other a dozen times before. We watched the stars go from a few to too many to count. Keel headed down to the bow to check a voicemail. I went below to grab the next round. That's when the CB came alive. A familiar voice cracked over the tiny speaker. Any vessels on Lake Pepin tonight? This is the Pearl of the Lake. Call me on channel 68. There was a small, stupid beat where my brain had to catch up. Hey, that's us, I thought. We're on Lake Pepin. I dialed over to 68, just in time to hear another boater answer and then back out. You're stuck on the water, sandbar, huh? Yeah, I don't think we're who you're looking for. Then the city marina chimed in, suggested calling the fire department. More bureaucracy than assistance. There was a pause, long enough for me to jump in. King the mic, Pearl of the Lake. This is Winchester and the expedition vessel. We're in your neighborhood. What's your 20? We're straight across from Lake City, eastern shoreline. And we're pretty well stuck on a sandbar and could use somebody to make some wakes off our bow. By the time I keyed the mic, en route, see you real soon. Keel was already at the helm. It turned out the voicemail he'd been listening to was from the captain also, asking if we were still on the lake. Keel and I didn't speak, just a look. The one that only people who have been in tight spots before can share. Then action. Turns out, sometimes the universe does call twice. As an adventurer, you get used to setting up camp where most people wouldn't walk once. You prepare because you want the odds tilted enough in your favor to sleep at night. You accept that if you didn't prepare enough, well, fate makes the last call. We were on a 40-foot houseboat with more equipment than sense. The captain needed wakes. We could make wakes. It was pretty simple. With Keel at the helm, I was tearing into cases left and right until I found 2 of my dive flashlights. They were new, bright, and strobe capable. Bought with a monster hunt in mind, not a river rescue. Funny how tools don't care what you thought you were buying them for. I lashed about 2,000 lumen to the rail of our boat, cutting the night smaller with every flash. Interior video cameras back on, just in case the river decided we were the more interesting story tonight. Besides, watching your houseboat sink to the bottom of the Mississippi is something you want to watch more than once. Keel pushed the engine wide open. Our lumbering rectangle of a boat started heaving through 5-foot wakes, slamming everything closed and open again. Only way to stay on your feet was to hold on to something tightly, reminding us that a lake on the Mississippi is still the Mississippi River. Within minutes, we had the pearl of the lake in our glass. She was easy to pick out, all lit up, hunched low in the water, not moving an inch. 100 feet of stuff. Some smaller boat was already circling, trying to kick her free. Didn't work. From a mile out, we could see it was doing more smoking than saving. Honorable attempt. It was time for a different approach. Binoculars raised, we talked the plan through once without taking our eye off the battlefield before us. Silently the second time. 2 rules. Don't hit the pearl. Get as close as possible without hitting the pearl. We could easily sink ourselves trying to make these wakes. Take the pearl down with us. People hurt, maybe worse. The captain was hung on a traveling sandbar, the river's favorite joke. Too close to the eastern shore to risk running behind her on that side. To the left of us, the port side, where the water was deeper and the consequences sharp instead of guaranteed. We'd run downriver, just off her bow, port to port, wide open. If that didn't do it, we'd loop and do it again. Our wakes would stack in that sense. 3 walls of water for the pearl to rise on. From 100 yards out, she loomed like a 3-story building on her side. Then, there was no more time to plan. We streaked past her the first time with maybe 20 feet of air between our hulls. My brain was doing that race it does in dangerous moments, taking in too much data, but staying weirdly calm. I remember 2 things clearly from that first pass. 1, the sound of those big red paddles pounding the river like a heartbeat. A fast, panicked heartbeat. And the absence of any movement in the pearl's body. We cut a wide arc, looping back upstream. The second pass was tighter. We were closer. The air was filled with the wind from our top speed mixing with diesel exhaust. As we neared our second pass, the Pearl's deck rail looked like it was within arm's reach. We were now riding our own wakes from rounding the first pass, each one rising us up a few feet and setting us down a few feet closer to the Pearl. Risky. And that's when the screams hit me. Loud and numerous. Terror? No. and not fear. Joy. Exuberant excitement. Of course, I'd hear them that clearly, only a few feet between us and closing every second of wakes we navigated. You see, the tourists had poured onto the Pearl's portside deck, literally hats in hands, waving in the air, shouting like they had just been upgraded from a mild sightseeing cruise to a story they'd be telling for the next 20 years. The brightly painted red planks pounding the water surface had created a mist-filled cloud by the time we got to the back of the Pearl. My face and the railing wet from now 2 passes. Our starboard side was riding a wall of water. Our port side was flirting with the Pearl's paint. Keel at the helm, I at the stern, and for a moment, all I could do was listen. And underneath it all, the low, grinding fatigue of the sandbar letting go. We turned hard to starboard, finishing our second pass, watching the Pearl climb the stack of waves we'd thrown at her. Wide arc keel was making ready another pass when he yelled over the straining engine, "Are they moving?" Binoculars pressed to my face, my stance wide for balance. I think so. Keel idled, and we rode our own wake, ready to jump back into action. Then the CB cracked with the captain's voice. "That did it. We're free." The Pearl of the Lake, 100 feet of stubborn riverboat, easing backwards off the sandbar and swinging her nose back into the channel like she'd just remembered what she was built for. And for once, Keel and I weren't just 2 dreamers chasing mysteries that won't give answers. We were just good at something that mattered in the moment. Practical, tangible, real. The Pearl slipped back into her route, lights reflecting off the water in a perfect old-time postcard. There was a moment, bright as a flare, shorter than I would have hoped for, when all in me lined up with everything around me. Like the world had finally asked a question I knew how to answer. Not because I'm brave, not because I'm trained for it, just because sometimes the universe hands you a shape, and for one impossible breath, you fit it. But the truth is, moments like that never stay. They burn. And then they leave you standing alone in the dark, trying to decide if that was purpose or just proximity. For a few breaths, everything was right. Sometimes that's all the world gives you, or that's all you'll give yourself. Comfort has a short half-life out here. We realized pretty quick that staying in the middle of the river was a terrible idea, rescue story or not. We turned northwest, hunting for the faint shore lights I'd filed away. Keel yelled, "Ah, that's why you kept looking behind us on our way out." Keel held course, threw me a point for my diligence, and I kept watch with the binoculars, the dive lights still strobing away on the rails. The river was black glass over moving teeth, still heightened everything. Time passes differently. Found our harbor. It was night, after all. Line in hand as Keel skillfully navigated us to our slip. I, on the outside of the rail, hopped off the aft. The quick cleat hitch on the dock, I've done it countless times, followed by a fast sprint to the bow. Grab the line before she drifts too far out, and then somewhere in that blur of rope, gear, and exhaustion, I went overboard. 1 second I was on the dock, brain full of things not under my boots. The next, I was completely underwater. There was a half second at least where my focus sharpened to a knife's edge. It told me, hey, you're underwater, less than ideal. I instinctively pulled myself to the surface, flashlight still clutched in one hand. Gasping for air, I see the dock a few feet in front of me. In no time, I'm popping out of the water onto the dock to Keel, yelling, "Are you all right?" The only thing that hurt was my pride as I grabbed the bow line and, yeah, 5 by 5. Keel, good, minus a point. Fair. I turn and look where I just was doing my impromptu swimming, shining the light onto a stagnant, growth-covered pocket of river that did not feel remotely hospitable. Damn. I decide the best course of action was whiskey for my mouth, which felt invaded by every microbe on the Mississippi at that point. The second shot was for me. Keel felt compelled to join. Mouth sanitized and a few extra rounds of whiskey for the day. Eventually we put on some creature feature hybrid, anaconda meets sharknado, the sort of thing you watch ironically on a houseboat. Never really watched, just started talking about what we always end up talking about when the dark finally settles in. Global lake monster phenomena, UFOs, strange comfort of knowing the world is bigger than the box most people keep it in. Late to bunk, early to rise. The life of a monster hunter. Sunday morning came with a cruelly long to-do list and not nearly enough time to do it. We'd already put the sonar rig through its paces earlier in the expedition. Now it was time to give the underwater camera one more run. We motored back out onto Lake Pepin, hitting a few sighting locations we hadn't had time for yet. Keel even got into the water with the camera at one point, giving the rig more range than the crank alone could provide. We got some intriguing footage, driftwood, shadows, the disorienting dance of light and silt, but nothing that screamed lake monster. Traffic picked up as the day went on the surface. Boats of every size appeared on the horizon and slid past us. The quiet river we met 4 days earlier now looked like a thoroughfare. To our south, we had hours of river to navigate. It was time, sadly, to motor this one to a close. We left behind a completely different Lake Pepin than the one we met. The water teemed with human life now. Tourists, anglers, families, kids learning to trust the wobble of a boat under their feet. And somewhere under all that, the same old questions, unmoved by our cameras, charts, and hopeful eyes. We turned south, the Mississippi carrying us all the way. Getting our land legs back, we packed up and headed out. Keel's got a lecture to give in the morning, state over. Me, I'm going to see how many states I can hit before I have to face everyone else's reality. Some places you don't escape. You just outrun for a spell. Rain's been following me for 3 states now. I used to think patterns meant something. Lately, not so sure. The scent of the river still clings to my canvas jacket. Collar up, habit. There's always another storm on the horizon. Just like that one case file I don't open, save for in my mind on long black roads. Time to think. Time to imagine consequences. Time to picture harm propagating outward. Time to realize that intervention might not stop the wrongdoing, only redirect it toward the people you loved. That moral residue only been more corrosive with time. That case file I don't open, the one I stepped back from years ago. I still don't know if that was justified restraint or unmitigated failure. All I know is my decision. It sits heavier than the others. A file that never closed, just settled. Like silt in the murky river. Of all my cases, it's the one I still measure myself against. It would seem sometimes punishing yourself with a simpler story is easier than carrying a complicated truth. But baby settles me into the night the only way she can. Steady engine hum, low and loyal. It's not so much me driving her as it is she's riding shotgun. Rain slick on the blacktop. Headlights stretching just far enough to pretend the road has no end. Some nights, I let myself believe it. It's hard to make sense of the last week. Harder still to pair it with a life that hasn't followed a straight line in decades. Every theory I've tested breaks somewhere between math and miracle, between what should happen and what does. That's where I live, in the noise between cause and effect. Call it paranormal, mysterious, or unexplained. It doesn't much care. Baby hits a seam in the asphalt. Soft jolt. Familiar. Road's heartbeat syncing with mine. Comfort. I don't have a clean answer. Maybe there isn't one. Perhaps the better question isn't whether a life gets wasted, but what you're willing to spend it on. Curiosity, empathy, patience. But they're also the only things that have ever felt like mine. Not the ending I thought I came for, but the one that made sense of the man who did. There's a moment every so often, rare as a quiet bar on a Friday night, When the noise finally drops out. When the world quits shouting long enough for you to hear the truth you've been circling for years. Somewhere between the rain on the windshield and the river still drying in my hair, I realized something I wasn't ready to say out loud. Not about monsters, not about the rescue, about me. All those strange expeditions, the graveyards, the back roads, the motel rooms with the always broken blinds half open, all the conversations with people who've seen things this world refuses to make room for. Maybe they weren't distractions or escapes. They were preparation for weeks like this last one. Nights where the world tilts, and for a beat, you're the only one standing in the gap. Wipers drag across the glass, a long, tired scrape. Maybe it's just me. The kind that makes you wonder how many more miles you can put between yourself and the mask the world requires you to wear. Baby's dashboard glow paints the cabin in amber, makes the raindrops on my window look like falling sparks, keeping me company. Whatever this life is, it's mine. At least for a few more miles. A life, one built from questions, bad timing, wrong turns, and just enough stubbornness. You know, long as somebody out there's walking through the worst night of their life, there ought to be someone willing to stand in the dark with them. That's the job. That's the coat you don't take off. Not the worst job. Hands on the wheel, river behind me, road rising up to the horizon like it's daring me to never stop. Coffee's cold, rain is steady, and somewhere out there, a new legend is being born, and right beside it, another bit of history that's slipping through the cracks before anyone thinks to carry it with them. Well, every road ends somewhere. Sometimes it's a place, sometimes it's a question. Maybe what haunts us isn't the past at all, but the shape it leaves behind. The feeling of what the future is already forming in the void ahead, and how we live with it after the void stares back. So next time the map edges near, next time someone whispers that they saw something the world wants to forget, I'll still be out there, somewhere between the mile markers and the unknown, listening. Until next time, keep your questions loaded, your exits marked, and your boots on the back roads.
Why won't you say nothing at all? Just walk on by. Don't give me your love. Why won't you say nothing at all? Just walk on by. Don't give me your love. I'm tired. God knows I'm tired. I want you just to look at me when you walk on by. Don't give me your love. Why won't you just look at me when you walk on by? Don't give me your love. I'm tired. God knows I'm tired. Oh, why won't you say nothing at all when you walk on by? Just give me your love. Why won't you, oh, say nothing at all when you walk on by? Just give me your love.